So, dude, what's going on? Fill us in. I mean, I haven't seen you since Winter Strong 2 years ago. But you were at Sornex this year for Summer Strong, right? Or did I just do
No,
wrong
no,
idea?
I didn't make it down this
Okay.
year. I was prepping for like workouts and that kind of thing.
So how's that all going?
It's all going, man. I've been out for a little over kind of like a year and a half. I've worked out probably 5 or 6 times. Then I just got a workout with the Texans a few weeks ago as a long snapper. It's always been like a back pocket thing for me, but just my last season came off some injuries and that kind of thing. So I'm just knocking on the door.
How you feeling?
Dude, I'm good, man. Body's good. I've been kind of demoing a bunch of like strength and conditioning programs, that kind of thing, finding what works. But yeah, dude, if I can sneak in as a snapper and steal some more years, man, I'm all about it.
Dude, I always had a dream of, at least at the end of my career, that I could steal for at least 1 or 2 years. You know, I was a starter for my whole career. I'm like, maybe at the end I could just be like that good veteran guy that helps get the young guys ready and just play for like a year or two. And unfortunately, I never got that chance.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because like some of my buddies, they're like finessing training camp. Like they talk from like a position of leverage where like, yeah, I'm going to be the locker room guy and that kind of thing. And I just never had the leverage to do that. I was just scrapping and clawing at the bottom of the roster.
Yeah, no, I went from starting 16 games and then going in, and then my 10th year I got hurt, and I was like, man, maybe they'll just keep me, and I can just be a good locker room guy and help those young guys. And fuck, that didn't happen, and fuck, that was it. So and I remember seeing older guys do that, and I used to joke. I used to pull my shirt over my face like this and be like, give me the money, you fucking thieves, and they'd be like, yes, I'd be like, good for you, when I was in Philly. I think it was like my 4th year. We had a guy, Jim Pine, come in, and Jim had been a first-round draft pick, played for Cleveland. It was like in his 10th or 12th year. They brought him in as a backup center, maybe potentially start, but then the young guy we had was pretty good. And, dude, he just prepared and chilled and stole for 2 years. And I used to joke every day when I saw him. I'd be like, come with a bandana. I had like cap guns. I used to shoot at him. I'd be like, give me the money, you thief. And he'd fucking laugh. And he'd be like, dude, one day you hope to be this good. I'm like, it'll never happen to me. They'll never let me do this.
Oh, dude, guaranteed. I mean, that's the dream. But like, dude, some of the best teams in the league, they carry that depth too for when shit does happen. Like you see those guys step in for 2-3 games, and then it rolls into another season of the same role, and that's where you get some momentum. But again, you got to be in the right opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it seems with salaries and the way it works that like that doesn't exist anymore. At least I've noticed within the last 10 years that keeping guys around that are pretty good veteran guys, it might not be an every down type of player. They just don't seem to do it anymore, or maybe at least I'm just not noticing.
No, and especially even like they used to do it on special teams too. A couple guys would do 1 or 2 special teams, and that'd be part of that backup role. And then now they're trying to get young guys in, like develop them early. Like you don't want like an older backup now. You want to have like this long-term investment pay off. So it's definitely, it flipped kind of like, I guess probably everybody was saying like my first year in, so whatever that was 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is. But now with all the salary cap issues, it's going to even get forced even more to that.
Oh yeah, no, it's insane, and it only goes up every time they get a new TV deal. Take us on a journey, man. Like where did this all start for you? As I was going to prepping for this, I was looking at like your road to the NFL, and I was telling Tex today, I'm like, dude, that is an unconventional. I mean, I went to Berkeley, I got drafted, went to the Eagles, and was a starter as a rookie, and kind of went through. And I was looking at yours, and I really haven't seen anybody follow that track.
It was banana. You want the Spark Notes version, or you want like the long
snapper version?
Yeah, give me the long. Like I like details. I'm big on details and pieces. So yeah, man, stretch your legs.
Yeah, I kind of like picked up some everywhere I went to, so it kind of ended up being a cool little story. But so went to Northwestern, like came out of a really good high school, Pickerington Central here in Columbus. But got to Northwestern, eventually I was a safety at the time as well. So got there, earned playing time as like a redshirt freshman, rolled into like being a captain and like all Big Ten, first team all Big Ten, led the Big Ten interception. So I thought I had a chance to get into the NFL. Some people said late rounds. Some people said, like most everybody said, like undrafted free agent, but you'll be signed. Didn't get a fucking call on draft day. The only person that called me on draft day was my agent, and Pat Fitzgerald asked me what was going on. And eventually worked into some like tryouts at rookie mini camps, went down to Tampa Bay, And so I'm going in as a safety. And so it's Shiano's first year down in Tampa. And for our rookie mini camp, we're running 2-a-days. So practice in the morning and night, and we're running strength and conditioning in between practices. So the second practice on the first day, so we practiced, we lifted, we ran 10 hundreds, and then we went to the second practice and we had 3 outside linebackers, 3 sandbackers pop hamstrings.
Oh no.
So I was the biggest safety at the time. I was like 6'3", 215. They put me down at Sam for like the last 4 practices.
I played with Barry Gardner, who was second round draft pick out of Northwestern. I mean, Northwestern's a football school. I'm surprised that all Big Ten and that not even getting a snap. What was the knock?
Probably like my 40 when I came out, like it was kind of trash, and then I ran like a high 4.6. Some people had me a low 4.7, and that was probably the knock. Then I wasn't strong when I came out either. Like I broke my hand 3 times in my last like year and a half playing. But at least those are my excuses in the story I tell myself. But whatever, like it didn't show up. So anyways, after that, then I went to the Bears training camp, but I performed really well at those camps. And like they had Mark Barron come in Tampa, and then they had this other 3rd round pick out of Oregon State in Chicago. And like I competed with everybody. So like I was like, all right, I know I can play. So like that kind of kept me going through the whole the mess of the journey that I went on. But when I was in Tampa, like we were obviously doing helmets and that kind of thing. And I had Brian Cox as a linebacker coach when I was down there. And I had this opportunity where I kind of slipped under this guard on posto, and I like fronted up the running back, but I didn't like hit him. And he goes, would you hit him there? I was like, yeah, I would have knocked his head off. And he goes, well, I don't know that. Like, you should never pass on an opportunity to be physical, and never pass on an opportunity to like give high motor effort. So I took that, went to Chicago, did the same thing kind of happened. But then, so my agent didn't want to send me to the CFL because at the time you had to sign a 2-year deal. So he goes, go out to the Arena Football League for a few weeks. They had like 4 weeks left in their season. He goes, use that to cover and stay in shape. I was like, all right, whatever. So I drive out to Des Moines, Iowa with the Iowa Barnstormers, and I show up, and I think I'm already on the team. And I show up, but it's a 13-man tryout for 2 spots. So go through the whole tryout, made the team, was getting paid like $350 a week before taxes. And then that was some of the most fun football I ever played. Like, you're slamming people into walls, like fans are talking shit, pouring beer on you. It was absolutely phenomenal. My position was this jack linebacker where I just start on the short side of the field. I clear run, and then I run horizontal. Anybody, like, you can hit anybody at any depth. So like I smoked guys and had fun doing it.
Nice.
And then from there, I was working like 3 jobs in Chicago, just paying the bills at the time, living on like my buddy's couch. And then then the UFL became an option. So the UFL was still around. So I went out and tried out for the Omaha Nighthawks, made their training camp roster, had a good training camp. And then once NFL had their cuts, they signed like 20 NFL guys and cut me in the process. So like now I'm cut from a league I didn't want to be in anyways. So
what's the competition like? Like, I mean, I never, I played in college in the NFL, and I was always curious, like what's the competition in terms of these other, is it like you went out there? I mean, you played in the NFL, you played at a high level, you played at a high level college. Are you out there and it's kind of like, are you like, man, these guys could play in the NFL? Or are you like, oh, these guys are fucking dog shit?
A couple guys, like it's more the skill positions that like had the ability as opposed to like the bigger bodies. Like the bigger bodies, like the hands and feet and the physicality wasn't always there. The CFL is the closest across the board. UFL was decent, but it was kind of like a good division, like a good college team kind of concept. Mm-hmm. But then you had like some stud skill players, and like never really had any great quarterbacks either. But then, there's like, I'd say like 20% maybe had an opportunity, like, and could compete at least. And then, so anyways, from UFL, like I came back, thought career was over. My agent kind of like ghosted me for the most part. He said he sent emails and calls out to the CFL and to the NFL. Nobody responded. So I was like, dude, just give me the emails So I wrote my own email and sent my own college highlights to everybody in the CFL and NFL with like, hey, I'll be a dog for you, that kind of concept. And the only team that responded was Saskatchewan Roughriders in Canada. So went up there for that. So that was my whole first year out. I was in 3 leagues my whole first year out. I went up there, signed on their practice squad for a few weeks as their season was wrapping up, and signed a 2-year deal for the next 2 years in the CFL. And then the day I get back from Canada, I go out with my buddy in Columbus. He just got cut by the Patriots, Jeremy Ebert, and we get wrecked, and I end up getting jumped by 3 bouncers. So I get my jaw broke, teeth uprooted. It was a mess. And like, but this is where, Dr. Eric Serrano, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he happens to be from my hometown, like Pickerington, Pataskala, Ohio area. And I had met him a few times in high school when I like popped my groin and had a deep thigh bruise and couldn't run. Like he got me ready to play that week. And so like, I knew he was special. And then like one of the first times I went over to his house, like Jeter was at his house for the Ohio State Michigan game. So I was like, oh, this guy's got like some skill, some pull, whatever the hell. But so that night, like, so my mom ended up calling him after I was at the hospital and all that mess. And he got this surgeon to come in like 2.5 hours at 3 a.m. to do the surgery. And then like after like a week on the couch, I dropped 20 pounds on a liquid diet, sipping Percocet out of a straw. And then he comes to the house and says, get your ass up. We got to go train. And so I spent 6 weeks after that with my mouth wired shut, training at his house every day. And by the time I got out of there, like I was heavier, stronger, faster than I was before I walked into there. So that was cool to see. So like that's where I kind of learned about strength training, supplements, all these things. And I actually went back and did Northwestern's Pro Day like a month or 2 after that, and all my times dropped. Like I was faster, stronger, all that stuff. So like I found
what did you do for your training? Like what was so special that Serrano was doing? I mean, what voodoo? I'd met him numerous times. I've seen him present at Sornex. I've spoken to him, but he wasn't necessarily in my like performance circle. So I'm always curious about what he does.
Yeah. So initially, like I kind of had no idea, like I didn't really understand his concepts, but then so it ended up being like a lot of unilateral strength training, a lot more hypertrophy volume stuff than I had done in college. Like the college is the 5x5 method, all that crap. And then, but we spent a lot of time under tension, a lot of lat strength, a ton of development like of the lat muscle, because he's a believer that like that's what ties like the momentum of our upper body to our lower body. So he like believes that like lat strength is paramount in sports and transitioning strength from lower body, upper body as well. But majority of it was leg strength for me. Like we didn't like, I had popped a hamstring in college. So like at Northwestern, like I wasn't even allowed to squat my last 2 years because they considered me a hamstring guy, quote unquote. But then he does a lot of like the isometric contraction connectivity stuff where like you're firing your glutes, hamstrings, calves, and feet at the same time. So I spent a lot of time under tension there and build up like you remember those like the hamstring hangs you did the Sornex deal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were cool.
Yeah, so those, and then like we built that up to where he was throwing med balls on my heels, and then like he was doing like as I was under contraction, he was pulling on my feet and having me like my nervous system react. But like the big thing was like my legs got super strong through like we were doing like more hypertrophy supersets where it's like anywhere from like 12 to 20 reps, but then paired with the time under tension and the strength training unilaterally with the Bulgarian split squats was like his paramount deal, which everyone does. But I was getting to the point where I could like hold hundreds for 30 seconds at the bottom, hit 3 reps, drop them, and then do another 30 seconds with 3 reps after that. And like that was and that applied to a lot of his lifting methods. So that worked phenomenally for me. Didn't have any hamstrings after that kind of thing. And I've kept certain things from that along the way. And then I did a shoulder in college too. So I always did his shoulder stuff where just weird above the head, developing rear delt, full range of motion on the shoulders, where it ends up, a lot of his stuff just leaks into that like kind of 45-second plus under tension window, where like I've learned now like that there's this weird lactic acid threshold and strength that kind of like fatigues around that point. And so I kind of live there in a lot of the stuff I do now, and it's worked for me. But nice. Yeah, like a lot of his stuff is just incorporating muscles firing together. Like you're working groin adductors, like you're squeezing a med ball between your knees while you're doing the hamstring hang now, and all these things. And then, or you're like working these cross-functional lines where you're pushing and pulling at the same time and the core is being developed. And so all that just, again, made me more sound, made like the leg strength I knew I was weak on. So I think that's where my speed and explosion and quickness improved drastically. Again, like I ran, and like the second time I ran high 4.5, low 4.6, as opposed to the high 4.6, low 4.7. My broad jump the first pro day, so I was 215 my first pro day. I was 233 my second one. It was like 9.3 to 10.3, like things like that, which were massive. So I was like, all right, there's something here. I'm gonna keep doing this shit. And then, then I recovered from the jaw, went back to the CFL. They actually put me on practice squad because pretty hard to make the team up there as an American. You basically have to be a starter because you can only have 24 Americans on the team. And then, so the reason I got to play in Canada is because obviously, the field goal is on the goal line up there. So this like weak side backer was covering a post route by this tight end, and he ran to the field goal, broke his collarbone. So your boy got his opportunity there.
Nice.
And then just kind of never.
What a fucking idiot.
Yeah. Should have been standing there.
Yeah. What a dick.
Yeah. But so anyways, like I balled on special teams up there, did really well on defense as well. Got some opportunities to after that second season, my contract was up. Some NFL teams contacted my CFL team about working me out, but my CFL team didn't know who my agent was because I had contacted them. So put them in touch with my agent. And then my first workout with the Eagles is that you killed your workout, but while we're doing your blood work, we found this issue. It's probably just a lab error, but your platelets are crazy low. And so anyways, so I go to Serrano's office. He tests me again. My platelets are super low again. So I start going through this like battery of tests, like spleen screens, like all these like organ ultrasounds and that kind of stuff. And because initially like low blood platelets are a sign of like some variation of cancer and that kind of thing. So anyways, ends up I find out I have this rare blood condition called ITP, idiothrombocytopenia, unexplained low blood platelets. And so the Eagles won't sign me. I go and work out for the Saints, and I kill the workout. I run, again, a high 4.5. I do a 6.63 cone. Like I long snap. I do all these things. And like, I got Terry Fontenot, who's the GM for the Falcons now, saying, hey, we're going to sign you today. And, but actually we got to get this blood condition in order. So they're about to have me sign an injury waiver that if I didn't heal from any injury on time, they could cut me without pay. So hamstring, concussion, whatever, that like broken bone, just because it's a blood disorder.
That'd be a no for me, dog.
Yeah. So I said no. My agent at the time wasn't really doing much. Didn't give me any workouts besides the ones that called the CFL. So I actually fired him, hired a new agent. He got me 3 workouts in a couple days. Went and worked out for the Vikings. Didn't tell them about the blood disorder. They didn't find it. They didn't care. And then so signed with the Vikings. Had a good preseason there. Had a couple interceptions in the preseason. They put me on practice squad. And then like week 3, I got a call from the Texans. My agent, he's like, hey, go to the airport. And so like the Vikings were trying to keep me on their practice squad for full salary, like full guaranteed active salary.
Nice.
So I kind of had this decision to make, whether stay for full salary where I have some leverage, or go, because like if you get signed up a P squad, you only get 3 guaranteed games on the team you sign with, but so that you like an accredited season. So I kind of like, I'm at the airport, like got like a double Jack and Coke, making this decision and talking to my people. And so it's either go gamble on.
Did anybody ever recommend like papaya enzymes? They use those to boost platelet counts.
Yeah, so I did papaya, dude. I was eating like 6 full raw tomatoes a day. Yeah. I did the holistic approach. They put me on prednisone and like that. So my platelets are like between like usually like 45 and 65, where like healthy is like 300 plus.
Sure.
The prednisone got me up to 100. And then when that didn't work over a few weeks, this doctor, he goes, yeah, go take Promacta. And so I was like, okay. And like, so I'm under CFL health insurance at this point. And I go to the prescription place. And
they're like, this is a $1,000 cancer drug.
$5,000 for a month of Promacta.
Yeah, I was gonna say like 1,000 a week or something crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I was like, ma'am, like I can't afford this. And so this angel of a human, she goes, come back in an hour. So I come back in an hour, and she gives me like a free month of samples. And she goes, don't tell me I did this, but like, good luck to you, that kind of thing. Brought her back some flowers. She's a superstar. But that got my platelets up to back in like the 300, 350 range. But like it wasn't sustainable for me to pay that at the time. So I did it. And now I know I have at least a weapon to combat the issue if it becomes an issue for the NFL. Sure. Didn't end up being an issue. But so anyway, so I'm sitting in the airport trying to make this decision. And one of my buddies, like Dan Percy, is a quarterback at Northwestern for a while. He's a stud, but had some Achilles problems. But I'm on the phone with him. And he goes, "Dude, what the fuck are you doing?" He goes, "You played 3 years in 3 different leagues to play in the NFL, not practice in the NFL." And I was like, "All right, fuck it, I'm out." And because like my parents were telling me to stay, my agents like, "We have leverage. They're gonna get you up as soon as they can." And I was like, "No, I'm out." And then so I go down to Houston. I had a buddy down there, John Simon. I've been training with him at Ohio State for a couple off seasons. The Ohio State strength staff kind of welcomed me in because I had some buddies from high school that went there. So that was a blessing. Coach Slagle let me train with their NFL group for free for, again, a poor CFL guy. It was phenomenal for me. That kind of changed the trajectory of my training because they were just crush heavy weight, get like strong. That was phenomenal.
We found the exact same thing when I went down my first off season to Tampa and I trained with Raphael. We had like a really dope training group, and within like 4 years we had like 20 dudes showing up every single day, and like the competition and the elevation of just like the lifting, not only the training, the sprinting and the running, and like, you know, the accountability of fucking showing up and killing yourself. Pretty fucking amazing to train in those groups. I think people they never gave me an off-season workout deal anywhere I ever played, so I never trained anywhere I never trained with the team in the off-season. Yeah. And like my deal was like, man, if you guys aren't going to pay me, I'm like, well, you know, give me an off-season workout deal. And they're like, no, we know you're going to work out. I'm like, well, fuck, I'm not going to work out here then. Yeah. And but so we ended up creating these groups. But man, it's I think it's so underrepresented, like how important it is to have like-minded individuals that are doing the job, and you're competing with those guys every single day. So that when you go to training camp, it's like nothing's changed. I always caution dudes about like going into isolation and just training with their fucking weirdo trainer, and it's just them, and they don't have that like camaraderie interaction and that competition.
No doubt, dude. It was incredibly powerful for me because so like again, I'm walking into like Ohio State's NFL group where like the main guys I trained with were so John Simon, who actually just signed with Tennessee, Corey Lindsley, who's like the highest paid center out in San Diego now, or sorry, LA with the Rams. And then Nate Ebner, who is an incredible runner, like obviously played 9 years with the Patriots, went to Olympics in rugby. And then, so like, that was kind of like our core group. Then Zach Bourne, who's one of my buddy, he plays a fullback there, like had a cup of coffee with a few teams. But, so that was our like core group. And then you had like the Kurt Coleman's, the Laurinitises, and those guys around as well. But then, so like, and all these guys are stronger than me. So like, obviously I'm pushing myself from a strength standpoint. Anthony Schlegel, who's the head strength coach at Jacksonville now, has always been a savage, always been pulling 600 plus off the ground in his fucking boots and Carhartts and shit. And then, so me and Nate would run together, and then like I'd lift with all the big dogs, and dude, it was phenomenal for me. That was the strongest I've ever been, the most conditioned. It was a really cool group. It's kind of disseminated a little bit. Ebner's actually coming over to hit the sauna and ice here and some workout stuff in my house here in a little bit. But yeah, so I still have to have that group around me, but I also have to have structure too. Like just being accountable to show up at 7 a.m. with that crew 6 days a week was just, it was huge for me. And even this, now that I've been out of sport for a year and a half, I know I need structure. I can't just like, I'll work out at 8, the workout bleeds for 2 hours, and then it turns into like eating and supplementing and showering and all that shit. And then now it's 1:30 and I don't have and I've let the day get away from me. So structure and people around me are massive. And yeah, and those guys, or at least most of those guys, I trained with my entire career. So it was good to like kind of get back. Everybody knew the lifts, and like kind of like we loosely followed structure. Like some of it was Ohio State stuff merged with some of my Dr. Serrano stuff. And then it turned into like the boys started dabbling in a little bit of the conjugate method. that kind of thing. So just it elevated everybody, which is really cool. And then but anyway, so I get down to Houston. So I have John Simon from my lifting group, so I kind of have like a comfort zone. Dr. Serrano actually represented Brian Cushing in his first little ordeal with the NFL. So I had him down there. And then, so like, that was kind of I fell into this lifting group that was allowed to do their own thing outside of the team's deal. So I fell into a good training program down there. And then that was good. I balled my first season. I led the NFL.
What year was this?
This was 2015.
2015.
And so that year, like, I only played 12 games that year, and I led the NFL in special teams tackles, had a really productive season. And then, and then from there on, I was there for 4 years, ended up as a special teams captain. And and then now I tried to get some tape in the XFL last year, but I didn't sign till like the week before Trump shut everything down. So. And so now I'm trying to do the long snapping deal, and if anybody needs a vet, but at this point, like my last season, I played on a bum ankle that they misdiagnosed. So like I was playing special teams on I couldn't feel anything from my ankle down. I probably took 35 shots to the ankle that season. And then I switched agents again because I wanted like a bigger agency. And he was telling people I didn't play hurt. He didn't want to correlate 30 and hurt with all these guys, and it ended up. I had special teams coaches actually calling me saying, hey, what happened last year and that kind of thing. And I was like, I was playing on no ankle. And they're like, oh, well, you might want to tell your agent that because he's telling everybody you're healthy last year. So part of the problem that's kind of on me for switching agents and that kind of thing too.
Yeah, there's a weird piece in the NFL. Like I remember all of a sudden you turn 30 and like people start looking at you sideways and you're like, dude, look at the longevity. People are playing much, much longer. So I'm stoked with like guys like, Tom Brady and some of these guys playing into their 30s, because shit, I remember like I was when I was a young guy, I think Steve Everett, who was our center, was like 30 in his 7th year, and they were talking as if he was like father time, and they're like, well, Ev's only got a year left, he's 30 years, and I'm like, fuck, like I just remember thinking 30 was this milestone where pretty much they just fucking take you out and shoot you for the glue factory. And then all of a sudden I'm like 29, 30, and I'm like, man, I feel great. Like I'm playing, like, I think I'm playing some of my best ball. So it just was such a weird thing, and I don't know why. Maybe the perception is changing. Also, too, the other big thing is I remember when I was a rookie, went to training camp, 42 days in training camp with, we would go pads, special teams. So we were doing every 2 days was 3 padded practices and a special teams practice. So we would get the afternoons off, but we did that for 42 days in a row.
Yeah, savagery.
Yeah, so I mean, dude, and it was like 9-on-7, 1-on-1, fucking inside drill, Oklahoma. I mean, it was fucking full, full blitz pass. I mean, 11-on-11 run drill. I mean, it was like 3 hours of fucking suicide. And then all of a sudden the new CBA comes in and they're like, well, you only get like 5 padded practices. I think
maybe 8 during the season. Or?
Yeah, it was crazy. Like the numbers, I'm like, dude, this is crazy. I'm thankful I got to play in that era, but like I look at this and I'm like, no wonder dudes are able to play so much longer. I mean, the amount of banging that they're doing in practice is so much less. I mean, that's where everybody shoots all their bullets.
Yeah, dude, it's probably 80% of what it was when you were playing for sure. When was your last year?
I got hurt in 08 and I retired in 09.
Okay. Yeah, like dude, like the last 2 CBAs since then, like the PA's push for this health and safety is non-negotiable. Like that's the only line in the sand the PA's really drawn. Other than that, I don't think they're incredibly effective. But dude, it's been bananas the back down. And then with COVID last year, with injuries being the lowest they've been, like a lot of teams are backing off. Like did some of the training camps I heard about last year were just a cakewalk. And then obviously now
maybe it makes sense. I mean, what was wild about COVID is these guys didn't really have a traditional training camp. Like I think they brought them in, they did a ton of walkthroughs, they did their whole deal, and they went and played, and the ball didn't fall off that much, and guys were dramatically healthier. And I'm like, so maybe, like the Prefontaine suicide pace and today's a good day to die every single day. Like at the end of the day, like all that does is like creates expiration on these players really quickly, where they're wilting, let's say by 30. I mean, shit, I remember when Dick Vermeil was in the Rams. They would do 2 3-hour practices every single day, and they were wearing pads on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, shells on Friday, and then walk through Saturday, play Sunday, and they did that for years. And these were like 3-hour practices to the point where like dudes straight up, like the whole team was like, you can't fire us all, and fucking walked out and had a mutiny. And,
no doubt. So my first year in Houston, Dick Vermeil came and spoke to the team, and he basically called all of us pussies. And
that sounds about right.
But like, so like, cause he's telling us about all these practices, and like you got like JJ, these guys like, shut up. Like, cause like, obviously he's feeding, cause like, so another contrast, like, so Minnesota, we probably went live like 3 times in practice, like, the entire training camp, where like you at least have some freedom to go live and work on your tackling and that kind of thing. I get down to Houston week 3 or 4, whatever it was, and the first play of practice is goal line, and JJ Watt smokes Arian Foster, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So like I haven't even had that like perspective yet that like some teams still bang like that. And then Bill O'Brien, he backed off the next 4 years, like by the time like where we do a couple goal line live in training camp, and it was like that was the majority of it. But yeah, dude, that like, but I like just going through 42 days of like where you can like bang and go live, it just, you only get so many miles on the tires, man, and the joints and that kind of thing. And then now you're entering the season on like depleted joints, depleted like energy systems. Like, yeah. No.
Oh, I mean, everybody was beat up. I mean, you play in that first game, and you're like, oh, thank God the game's coming, because now they can reduce the fucking practice schedule.
Yeah, we have an off day.
Oh yeah, I mean, dude, it was. I was a rookie, so I just figured like, you know, I don't want to say anything. I'm just figured this is the way it fucking is. And then I talked to my other friends on teams, and they'd be like, what the fuck is going on over there? And then you know, and then go play for Dick Vermeil, who was still in this like unbreakable mindset, you know, and anybody that's knows Vince Papale and that movie, I mean, dude, Dick Vermeil,
Invincible.
like, Invincible. He ended, I mean, the amount of careers that Dick Vermeil, and I love him, he was a fucking great dude, but the amount of careers he ended because of that, like the volume of training going into it, I'm just glad to see that the NFL has not continued on that path, and they realize that, you know, hey, we're investing a ton of money in the players. You know, we have a vested interest in their health. Like my favorite was when I came in the NFL, they told us that you got a concussion when you got knocked unconscious. And then at the 10 years later, when I was leaving the NFL, at like my last year, they go through that little concussion talk. They're like, you'll know you get a concussion when you get your bell rung, your eyes go cross-eyed, you hear something, your vision feels blurred, or you feel disoriented. And I remember the trainer being like, how many concussions do you think you've had? Based on that definition, I was like, I don't know, 70,000.
Yeah.
I mean, fucking bell rung every single play. I mean, it was just amazing that they pivoted that quick. I mean, but they had to. I mean, dude, you got guys committing suicide. I mean, you got these dudes getting ALS. I mean, the amount of broken toys. I mean, you know, the island of misfit toys was fucking getting packed, and they had to do something.
Yeah, and now like the benefit now is like we have science behind that. Obviously, the whole CTE thing came out since then, but like it's still like guys still don't know how to like mediate some of that. Like again, like there's benefits to high fat diets. There's proper ways to like supplement to decrease brain inflammation, and then like hyperbaric chain, whatever you want to do. But like now at least there's some push towards that. But like it's still not, there's not a great support. I don't think there's still a great support system in the NFL with the trainers or like the PA pushing hard for like neurodegenerative like preventive practices, because like I've tried to push for that out of the PA before too, and kind of fell on deaf ears. Yeah,
well, the thing about the PA, and this has always been the issue, is that the individuals who are in the kind of, I would say, like the leadership of that thing are so closely tied to the NFL that there isn't a vested interest. Like, look at all these guys that are kind of the leaders in the PA as players, and then when they retire, they get a cush job in the NFL or in the PA. So it doesn't really make sense for them to rock the boat and to do the things that they need to do. So that was always my gripe with a lot of that. But I always think, dude, if an NFL team approached me, the basic things that I would recommend would probably extend their ability and their players' health so dramatically. I mean, like you mentioned it. We had Joe Dirt, who's like the foremost Dirty.
Yeah.
Don't try and church it up.
No, it's we call him Joe Dirt, and when I text him, he's in my phone as Joe Dirt, but it's Dr. Joe Dirte.
Tampa Bay.
He's down in Tampa. He's the foremost expert. He's the guy that tests all the hyperbarics for the Navy. And we were talking about lengthening telomeres. I mean, to the point where you can lengthen your telomeres up to a third, and you only get so many replications before that's the end of you. So I mean, like, you're talking about taking a third. If you're 30 years old, you're going back to 20. And the effects of that, like the hyperbarics in terms of like oxygenation, I mean, using blood flow restriction training to increase the thickness of, the artery walls to make sure that everything has like good plasticity, stuff in the brain. I mean, there's so many things that we could put in to the training program, supplementation. I mean, just basic creatine monohydrate, neuroprotectant. Getting, blood work, figuring out gut. I mean, realizing that there's a link between the gut and the brain. And, the pain receptors are the same. Man, there's so many things. I remember, I think when I was towards my last year in KC, I fucked up my ankle real bad. And it was like this big. And of course, they're like ice and stem, and it's not working. And we had this old doc that used to come on game day who was kind of an old osteopath, just kind of an old like witch doctor. And he also worked on horses. So I asked him, Doc, hey, can you bring me in some DMSO? No problem. And so he brings in the DMSO, and he's like rubbing it on my ankle, and these like young trainers are sitting around watching, and they're like, "What is this?" I'm like, "All right." And so
you got to ask, big man.
And literally, they wrapped my ankle. They packed it the next day. All the swelling was gone, basically drained. It was empty. Everything looked great. I played the game, and you would have thought that I showed cavemen fire. And I'm like, dude, how do you like this is just basic, like transdermal, like went through the whole thing. And, a lot of this stuff has just been forgotten. And I think the NFL becomes such a bubble that there's some really good people that are doing some amazing things. And I think if the teams were to adopt it, it would make not only a much more dynamic environment, but also probably save them costs on the backside. Or maybe they're like, fuck it, we don't care, So.
Oh, no doubt. And like and it's a lot of it's very simple remedies too. Like, again, like the creatine, the DMSO, me and Kush used to get DMSO in our IVs. So that the supplements would go deeper and be absorbed. But like, obviously we'd smell like fish for a couple hours. So like,
it's the sour milk.
Yeah.
Smell.
And then so we'd be in the training room later that day or the next day, and they'd be like, oh, and like they just shun us because like we put this in our body, like, oh, it's gonna destroy you, all this stuff. But like, did it work like a charm? Like that like it just lubed me up. But
well, I mean, dude, like I don't know if it still is prevalent, but I remember being in the shower and seeing every single dude in there with a little bandage on the top of the butt where they'd hit you with the Toradol shots. I mean, and so you're like, dude, you're pumping these cats full of injectable anti-inflammatories, but you're nervous about DMSO?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then give us something to counterbalance the effects of all these anti-inflammatories and stuff. Like I know guys now that are adopting like the BPC 157, which is phenomenal for at least helping gut health or inflammation and things along those lines. But like, what's
the take on those peptides with the NFL? Is that considered performance enhancing?
No, not that I know of. Like I know guys that use it locally, like in their knees and ankles. And then I know a few guys that do like that have to use the Toradols and stuff to get through the season. I always forget what's the area like right by the belly button that you shoot. What do they call that? But anyways,
well, like your injection site, like for, let's say for diabetics or insulin is usually one thumb length off of the side of the belly button.
Yeah.
But really anywhere in that injection site, dealing with type 1 diabetics, like you kind of rotate through different injection sites so you don't get scarring underneath. So
yeah, but they don't like they won't test for the peptides, and I think they're phenomenal for inflammation. I've used them a little bit on my ankle.
Well, they can't test for the peptides. I shouldn't say that. I'm sure they can test for anything, but I don't know. Who knows, man? They're so weird with it. It's kind of like the marijuana deal.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they're still testing dudes for marijuana, and I'm like, man, I'm not a marijuana smoker, but yet I am also not a fan of opiates. I would much rather, like, if it was the option between the two. I mean, they used to hand that stuff out like breath mints. I would much rather say, hey, you know what, like, let these guys, if they want to smoke, and that's what allows them to mediate this pain much better than just fucking pumping these dudes full of perks and Vikes.
Yeah, dude. Well, like Yeah, I always believe in like the anti-opiate option as well. But like the thing, like they allow that crap, and then like, but then they don't actually like. I don't think they enforce the stimulants either very well. Like I think the fact that some guys can take Adderall and some guys can't, I think that's a PED. I think that's trash. That it's not like acceptable across the board. Like you have some guys trying to take it because it does improve their mental capacity, their ability to focus and make calls. Like I've played with guys that can't make all the calls. Then you put them on Adderall and they're fine. So like if that's helping him that much, why can't I fucking take it?
I played with a dude, Jordan Black, who had severe ADD, and him not taking his Adderall or whatever his meds were, and they had him kind of this like he was absolutely like off the wall. And I remember being like, it was really the first time that I had been around somebody who had like severe ADD. And I realized I was like, oh, because I mean, I'd always seen dudes taking Adderall and, going in and getting some, because you got to get a script for it. But I always thought it was just kind of like, it seemed like ephedrine to me. But I was around him and I was like, okay, I get it now. Like there's certain people that really need this. And there's probably a lot of dudes that are just fucking, want to howl at the moon and, pop a bunch of stuff, see laser beams.
But some guys only take it for games where like it does improve their cognitive performance on the field to like, again, process formations, all that kind of stuff. So I just never saw the fairness in letting, because like some guys play this as like, yeah, you have to get a TUE, and like
an exemption.
Yeah, and so you go in there and like you play the card that I have ADD, I'm not focused, like I'm always all over the place, and then like they get it, and like I could have played the game too and probably gotten it as well, but like I just it just frustrated me. That was just one of my gripes.
So I think it was my third year. I took a helmet to the shin and broke my fibula. They casted me for about 5 days, and then I played 3 weeks later, and I couldn't walk. So the doctor just started fucking giving me Darvocets. So I took 5 Darvocets, and finally I didn't feel my ankle enough to go out and play. And I remember coming back to the doc, and I was like, man, I can't feel my ankle, but I'm super tired. And he was like, great, take this. And it was Ritalin is what he gave me. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, I don't feel like I'm pretty numb, but I feel pretty wired. And you're just out there beating on these dudes. And I always remember thinking like, fuck, this is better living through pharmacology. Now, he was a pretty interesting dude. He was a psychiatrist who worked for the military, was like one of our team docs, but he worked for the military in terms of like, developing different strategies for like mental warfare. Like he designed the playlist that they fucking blasted Noriega to get him out of his house. That was like his claim to fame. So I love talking to this dude. I was like, Doc, awesome. Doc, I'm feeling really tired. He's like, take one of these, you'll feel great. And that was a fucking hilarious. I ended up going out and making Madden's horse trailer, so obviously it worked. But yeah, no, I mean the stories and like, I mean, and I'm so stupid. What I should have done and what my dad recommended is he's like, every day after practice or after every game, you should have a journal or like a tape recorder, and you should dictate all of this craziness that you encounter, so that like years later you will have like a record of it, so you can go back and pull this information, because unfortunately people forget stuff. And that's smart, old man, dude. I regret not doing that, because man, there were so many hilarious things that I think back now where I'm like, man, nobody would have believed this.
No, not at all. And I'm a big believer in journaling now too. I've gotten more into it after I played. I did a little bit while I played, but yeah, dude, just to go back and like look at even if it's just your workouts, like tracking your logs and understanding the methodology you use, like it's valuable. Then even like going back and looking at, again, like what coaches said or what relationship you're in, that kind of shit, you can just learn from it. So I have this company outside, we started developing this company called Mind Strong Project while I was still playing, me and a buddy. And so we obviously teach mental skills, but the big pillar that we teach is like the breath work stuff, like how to control psychology through controlled physiology and that kind of concept. But like the journaling's done friggin' wonders for guys, just as far as, I guess basically like kind of unburdening them from like all the shit that's going on in their mind. And then like some of our baseball players and like hockey guys, like they fall into the same trap that we did, where it's pain pills, sleeping pills, pick me ups, caffeine, like all that stuff. And they realize like, oh, I'm just like I'm like grabbing Band-Aids for the real problem. That
dude, I noticed pretty early on that the guys that tended to have the most problems were the guys taking the most painkillers. So like when I was a young guy, I remember all these dudes that were like the older guys were all in like divorces and were like involved in all this fucking just like drama, and it seemed to be that those guys were the ones taking the most amount of painkillers. So I kind of didn't take painkillers. I mean, obviously, I took them if I had surgery or something was really fucked up, like I break my leg and I'm playing on a fibula that I can feel moving, and the doctor's like, you got to take these to play. But for the most part, I didn't take them, like just didn't take very many, and it was just this observation of like that, and also like I didn't drink any coffee, I didn't take any caffeine, I didn't start drinking coffee until I got out of the NFL. But like because I used to watch Runyon literally pound like 12 cups of coffee every single day and be fucking wired. So it was pretty interesting, man, like the amount, like the ways that guys were coping with this stuff. And people asked me like, well, what about the pain issue, and I was like, man, I'm not nervous about the pain, and more importantly, I'm not afraid of it. I feel like you got to make a deal with pain. Like it's an old friend. He's going to come on in. He's going to sit down. We're going to have a few conversations, and then he's going to fucking leave. And if you can make a deal with pain, and more importantly, like you were talking about hot and cold. So Sean Landetta, my rookie year, was a huge contrast guy. It was like hot and the cold, and he talked about like, he called it a cold plunge. But he was like, hey, this has allowed me to play 20 plus years. And I was a young guy, so I used to do 2 in the hot, 3 in the cold, and I used to do that cycle probably anywhere from like 5 to 10 times, at least twice a day. And I think like that allowed me, and so it's pretty interesting now. I see all this stuff with like people doing like Wim Hof breathing, cold work, whatever. Like my whole deal was when I got in the cold, I wanted nobody to know that the water was cold. So like no emotion, guys are like like freaking out. I tried to get in and just be cold as ice, and just like accept it, and you kind of go into your brain and like. But it's killer to see that like the contrast baths and how much people are doing, like you're talking about with like the hot and the cold stuff. I love it. I mean, I do it every day in the, when I get in the shower, I run it as cold as I can. And then I do need to get a cold tank here at the house. That'd be nice.
Yeah, dude, what you did is a crazy intuitive, like, and you can go by feel, and that's how you should go. You shouldn't use all these avoidance painkillers and pick-me-ups and that kind of stuff. Like you can feel, and then like, so when like I'm a believer that like the cold is a stressor, and you're obviously controlling your physiology and yourself in there, like to show no pain or whatever, but you're in the process, you're probably controlling your breathing and all that kind of thing too. So now you can learn from that shit, and that makes you fucking tougher, harder to kill anyways. But like, so like when I got into all that stuff, like initially, like my doctor, he's like a disciple of Serrano. Like he basically told me, he goes, you should be able to stay in the cold tub for 20 minutes up to your neck. So I trained myself to do that. And obviously you got all the guys on the team looking at you like you're a psychopath, because most of the guys only getting up to their legs. So
dude, what was funny was for the most part, like the black dudes always were hilarious, because you always had like one dude that was like a fucking polar bear. He like get up to his neck, and then other dudes like put one foot in and were screaming. And I used to love it, dude. I would get up and try to like, get up to my neck, and then at the end try to put my head underneath for at least like 30 seconds and pour as much ice in, and like see if, because I mean, really, realistically, your body numbs in about, it's like 120 seconds, because I used to count it. And man, I loved it. It's hilarious to see like how far people have gone in, and I'll actually talk to people about like this life-changing experience, and I'm like, you should have just played fucking sports. I mean, they used to have cold tanks right on the side, like horse troughs, when we were in training camp at Cal, because we were in Stanislaus University, which is out in the Central Valley. So it was like, 115 every day. So they had these huge horse troughs filled with ice, and we used to literally just strip down after practice and get in. I was like, you should have just played sports. You would have figured this stuff out. So
yeah. But again, it's intuitive again, like, and it's reframing your brain. Like most of the people have these like shocking experiences because their mom told them their whole life, you don't go outside with a hat and gloves on, you're going to die or get sick or whatever the fuck. And then like now, like we'll go cut holes up in Minnetonka, up in Minnesota, and we'll dip, we'll do 3 minutes, we'll hold our breath under the water, all that stuff. And then we'll get out and we'll move around for 30, 40 minutes before we go back in the sauna and stuff like that. And it just reframes your mind. All right, now I can be comfortable in the cold. I actually have energy systems to fight this environmental stress. But now we're just a bunch of soft humans that go from 70 degrees inside to 7 degrees in the car to work, to your car and back home. And now like the system's not being used. So the immune system's not being stretched. The nervous system's not being stretched. And you don't get all these phenomenal benefits. Like I'm about to go sauna and ice after this. And like, dude, I sleep like a baby afterwards. my soreness goes away, because like when you do the cycles and the contrast, you get the vasoconstriction, vasodilation, vasoconstriction, and all these little muscles on all the veins and arteries and stuff, they're working. And like, so like fat people, like when they get in the cold tub, sometimes it bites and hurts because they don't use the cardiovascular system. So it's just like another red flag for not being healthy. So all these things, and like we'll put some of our NHL guys through this stuff, and they'll burn 700 calories just sitting still for an hour, going back and forth between the sauna and ice. So it's stealing. And then so now you get the immune system function, you get the nervous system reset, you get cardiovascular work. Like it's freaking stealing. You've been doing, and you did it 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, so like all that stuff is, I don't know, like I think it's really cool that you found that naturally, like obviously like following other guys, but.
Well, I mean, so Sean Landetta, I don't know if you guys remember Sean, but he, dude, when he was at the Eagles, he was like in his 20th year. He played into like, he was a punter, and I used to call him the boss, because he'd always be like, hey boss. He used to like play with his shirt all the time. He'd be like kind of twitchy New Yorker guy. And he used to be like, hey, what's up, boss? So I used to call him the boss. And he told me a story, because he grew up in New York City, or maybe when he was playing, like he had some incredible stories about, he never drank and never did any drugs. So he was LT's wingman, Lawrence Taylor's, because Lawrence Taylor drank all the booze and did all the cocaine. Yep. But there were always dime pieces around LT. So he used to roll with LT everywhere just to catch like what was falling off the tree that LT couldn't catch.
Trickle down women, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, because that was just his deal. He just slayed. And so his stories were so epic, because he was sober and like just fucking regaled us with stories. And so like I used to go in there and like when I would see him do the contrast, I'm like, well, what is this? And he told me, he goes, hey, when I was a young kid, we go to New York City, and my dad used to work out at this like athletic club, and these old Jewish guys used to go in this like hot sauna, and then they would come out and get in this cold thing called a cold plunge, and they would go back and forth, and they these old men would do this and talked about like, this is the fountain of youth. And so he started doing it and did it through his whole career, and he was telling me that story, and I was like, dude, it seems great. And he was like, if you do this every day, you'll have a long career. And I'm like, dude, if you're playing 27 years and you have the stories of like basically being LT's wingman, driving in his Porsche, like just the stories were incredible. And I'm sure people are like, tell the fucking stories, but they're not my stories to tell. And I don't like telling other people's stories. But yeah, I globbed onto that. And I mean, I still do it, like not to the point, because I don't have like a bitchin' cold pool tub, but still cold water. It's funny. I got connected with a dude that has this like amazing system for cold tubs, and I was like, oh, that thing's fucking incredible. It was like 10 G's, and I'm like, I don't know if I can drop 10 grand on this thing. Like it, like the water recycles, and it was this, and then I was seeing like Matt Vincent and Starhead have like these chest freezers that they put on their side, and we're filling them with water, kind of a deal. And I was like, I'll look for one of those. And so I've looked at a couple on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, but I went out there and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm still 6'6". There's no way I'm fitting in some of these. So I got to find like a huge fucking one that'll basically be able to fit a whole body.
Yeah, just so I go to Tractor Supply and get a big horse trough. So I got one in the backyard, and then I bid on ice machines on Facebook Marketplace, and there's a couple like local auction sites where like I got like a $1,500 ice machine for half price, and that's my system. But it's just cool to see it all come mainstream. Like Joe Rogan had his shit on the other day, and then now I got like 5 people saying, oh, have you ever seen these ice tubs? I was like, yeah, we've been doing this for years.
Yeah. We got horse troughs right outside. I mean, same deal, because actually we have horses that run on our property. But yeah, same deal. What's amazing is like, you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, we were at Winter Strong where I saw you go out and get in that icy lake, and then go and get popped into that bitchin' kind of round,
Yeah, the barrel sauna I got on a trailer,
Fuck, that thing was awesome. I was like, God damn it, that thing is killer.
Yeah, dude, that's a cool little toy to have. But like, I mean, I use the sauna, so I'll do the sauna and ice like 1 or 2 times a week. It's more like a recovery method for me, because there's not a lot of great science in like hopping in the cold tub after a practice or after a workout. It kind of stunts some of the adaptation you're looking for.
Sure.
But like when you hit the sauna post workout and post like practice, like you get some aerobic benefits and that kind of thing. So I'll hit the sauna like probably 3 times a week after the workout, and then I do like the sauna ice cycles Wednesday and then one day on the weekend.
Yeah,
That's
dude,
kind of
I
the system.
I have a infrared sauna that I hit after workouts. So when I come down after, we train up here and then walk down, I got one in the backyard. So I'll get in there for like 25 minutes. It goes up to like 140. I think it's a near and far one.
Yeah.
But like for, just because you're right, I've read a lot about the ice being not necessarily beneficial post workout because it's reducing inflammation, and that inflammation ends up being, pathways for performance. So, I mean, it's blunting it. So, like, when do you throw in the contrast stuff? Is that on days off or at night for bed or away from the workouts?
I'm kind of I'm doing some of the conjugate method in powerlifting now with Corey Gregory here in Columbus, but I do it Wednesday just to kind of break up the week. I'll do that after I train at like 4 a.m. So then I'll do that at like 8:30, 9 o'clock, a few hours after, and like kind of refresh me for the end of the week. And then I do it on the weekend and like make a morning out of it, like have breakfast, like throw on music, like just vibe out kind of deal. But yeah, it's more of a flush for me, and like it gets all my soreness out. It's awesome. It's a great tool.
Nice. So what else do you do? I mean, you obviously train, you bang weights, you do this. I mean, do you have any interests outside of do any fight training, anything that looks like combatives?
Yeah, so I do jujitsu.
Nice.
I picked it up. So like as Kush was transitioning out of football, he was looking for something, and like he wanted somebody to roll with him. So me and him got into jujitsu probably a little over 2 years ago now. So we did like 6 months really hard at the beginning. He's a freaking savage now anyways, and like rolling with him, and like so we fell into this group at Gracie Baja West Chase down in Houston, and we fell into their competition group. So like me and him learned just like rolling with black and purple belts. So they choke us out and teach us how they did it, and then like he stayed in it for like the full 2 years. I was on and off. Then I got back into it here in Columbus. But dude, it just, again, like I think it's phenomenal. Just like the mental chess of it, the aerobic capacity, and then like it also like gave us something to compete with outside of sport, which I think is phenomenal. But I mean, just being able to again tap people out gives you confidence walking around too.
Yeah, no. In the off season, I used to go out and roll with this guy Joker and Eric Apple and a bunch of dudes in Orange County. So I used to do that, and just I always did like boxing fight stuff, and did jujitsu early on, but then got into that, and it was fun because those guys were all doing kind of ground and pound type stuff. So it was a little bit of jits and just a lot of hand stuff, which I actually liked because those dudes would try to shoot, and I just fucking murder them.
Yeah.
But then, you get on the ground, and all of a sudden, I'm pretty good. But all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, I'm like, I'm so fucking tired. Just tap me out.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, it's different. And that like, but like, dude, it's so beneficial for like an lineman too. And then, so like for 2 off seasons when I was in Houston, I stayed down there for probably like 2-3 months and trained with like Adrian Peterson at his gym, Athletic down there. But he owns that with Trent Williams. So Trent is getting down there training, and he brings like the Redskins O-line back when he was with them. But that dude boxes nonstop, and he is nasty. Like his feet and his hands are so just heavy, deadly. He's balanced. I mean, there's a reason why he's getting paid and playing into his 30s.
Yeah, no, I mean, just the like the focus mitts and like being able to go into the heavy bag and the ability to be able to sink your hands, and then footwork. If you got a coach, especially being able to work the footwork and the in and out. I mean, I always thought offensive line was like cutting a dude off in the ring. So I was fortunate. We boxed on the Cal boxing team in the off season, and we had a pretty dope trainer who I cannot remember his name. It was an old black dude, and he was real big on like cutting a dude off, chasing guys. Don't give people options. Force them into this position, let them fight out of the corner. And dude, it was a lot of angles. Like, hey, if you're trying to go here, you step here. Push people with the punches. Same shit playing offensive line. Like, hey, if I draw an angle, if I'm going here vertical and the quarterback's there, this is the path of least resistance, and I got to put my body between it and then strike violently. So it was, it made sense to me.
Yeah, but like that's where like I just like the mindset. Like in my head, I always called it chasing edges. Like I want to edge on whether it's my technique, my preparation, my recovery, all those things. So I just kept I found things that work for me. Like at the time it was I did a little bit of boxing while I was in Houston, and then obviously I followed Cush's lead on supplements and that kind of thing, and then I had my doctor obviously Eric Serrano, they pumped me towards red light, obviously my relationship with sunlight, all these things, and then it grew into IVs, it grew into hyperbaric chamber because Serrano's got 2 medical grade ones up here in Columbus, and I just tried to be better and better at what I did. But like a lot, like it's funny and it's frustrating at the same time, because you see so many guys in the league that don't know shit about supplements, that like, again, like don't understand like massage, BFR, acupuncture, all those things. The guy's just like, oh, I can play, I can show up. And it just, I mean, it fueled me, because I felt like I was getting an edge up on him. But at the same time, it's dumbfounding that these guys have millions of dollars and they don't take care of their body or like enhance their understanding of how to play longer, recover faster, those things.
Curse of the gifted.
Well, curse of the gifted. I mean, one of my favorites was seeing Russell Wilson talk about he invested $1 million into his recovery in this. I mean, they've never gone into like what that $1 million buys. But dude, if you gave me $1 million to say, hey, I need you just to blow this on performance, health, recovery, dude, I would have like a
Personal chef.
Oh, dude, first, I'd have a personal chef. I'd get like weekly, basal metabolic rate testing done, so the calories were exactly designed. I'd be using like that Hypermax oxygen machine that we've been testing. Blood flow restriction. Have your own home gym. So part of the research off of the hyperbarics that we got into with Dr. Joe, was like, I think it was 40 sessions of I forgot what the atmosphere was. It was like 2 atmospheres, 40 sessions, which was 40 sessions, 5, so 8 weeks, 5 sessions. They do a Monday through Friday was the protocol. Will lengthen your telomeres by up to 1/3 and pretty much fixes all the cognitive issues. So I mean, like, it's pretty much like a preventative measure for not only anti-aging, but like preventing CTE and helping these guys recover. So like the fact that these teams, I mean, shit, dude, like it would be so easy, a fucking rounding error to bring a few of those machines and then schedule people for, 30, 40 minutes and make sure, hey, you need this to get 5 days a week and run a whole bunch of players through it. And now all of a sudden you're safeguarding these guys. But then you also have to admit that this is a problem, which in the NFL is the biggest issue, is like plausible denial of like, we didn't know this was going to hurt you. We didn't know beating your head into the individual was going to fuck you up. And you're like, come on, what did you think that basically smashing your head into a wall, hundreds of times a day over the course of 10 years wasn't going to, result in at least something cognitive?
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but so my first time out to the PA, I think it was 2015 or 2016, was the day that, 3 days prior, the NFL came out and said there's a correlation between playing football and CTE. So in my mind, with the PA, that's leverage, that's powerful. And then we get out to the PA and they have their team of neuroscientists or whatever they are, or their director of medical treatment, those kind of things. He gets up there and he did, I can't remember all it was something crazy small, but he's actually the chance of an NFL player developing a neurodegenerative disease is it's only 3 to 5% higher than the general pop. Because a lot of the problem is psychological, where it's law of dominant thought, where you create these mental crutches and all these things. And I'm just this is the last thing guys need to hear when this just came out.
Sure.
And it just that was one of the frustrating things to me. But and that's when I brought
plausible denial. Denial.
And that's when I had just learned about hyperbaric chambers. And so I stood up in the PA meetings, hey, have we looked into hyperbaric chambers, at these atmospheres? And the guy goes, oh, you referring to the Swedish study? I go, no, I'm not referring to the Swedish study. I'm referring to just the science that's come out on outside of that. I can get you research, or can we get guys on high fat diets, at least lower the inflammation of the fat cells and in the brain, those kind of things. And he goes, yeah, there's something there, but they didn't want to hear it. And
so they started studying hyperbarics in the 1600s, and a doctor basically built a hyperbaric chamber and did surgery where they removed all of the blood from pigs, and the pigs stayed alive because the plasma was able to move. So they drained them of all their blood, and the pigs still lived.
That's crazy.
That was in the 1600s. The amount of research and we have a podcast. What was the podcast?
I'll send it to you, Brian, after this, but let me get the number.
So Dr. Joe's down in Tampa, and is he's the foremost expert because he's a Navy guy, PhD Navy diver. So he was able to do all the research through the Navy and the U.S. because they're the only people that can fund that type of research because the machines are so specific. I'm still hitting him up trying to get him to send me one. So he's like, hey, I got one you can have, but I need somebody to come down and help me fabricate and fix the trailer. And I'm like, I'm your guy. I'll show up on a truck and fix this motherfucker.
For our listeners, it's episode 488.
But the just the issue comes down to, and I'm sure you've seen this, is there's like these hyperbarics that are like what you see in the mall, where people are sitting there on their phones. Like that's not real hyperbarics. Like
no.
Like the like you can't wear any jewelry. There's no technology, because if you were, I mean, pure oxygen's gonna fucking make you explode.
Yeah.
With any deal. So like there's a lot of, I think, charlatan type of stuff, like the the strip mall hyperbarics that people go and they don't see any results, not realizing that actually true hyperbarics, like the medical grade, like the shit like the Navy and the way it's tested, is a whole different level of not only preparation, but just it's got to be pretty dialed. So that's where I think it got kind of a bad rap. It's kind of like EMS. So EMS is incredible for motor unit recruitment, but then you have these like weird infomercials where people are like putting it on their bellies and are like, it reduces belly fat, and you're like, no, it fucking doesn't, but you're going to sell an infomercial with it.
Yeah, and then it's like they don't understand the commit. Like, so like it is a process. It's like you have to go in. Like the lowest I've heard is 3 times minimum to the medical grade hyperbarics too. So now it's like a 5-day commitment for 6 to 8 weeks to actually see results. It's not in these, like I know probably 15 NFL guys that have their own hyperbaric at home, where it's the zip up with the oxygen compressor. Like you have to spend like 8 to 10 hours in there to get anything out of it. And like guys are using it for an hour and a half or 2 hours, or they're watching Netflix in there or whatever. And it's just not the drill. But so like, that's where like, and that helped pique my interest into like the breath world too, because you learn the power of oxygen through that too. And then now you understand the relationship between oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body, how to get it out, and just like how to use oxygen as like, again, like as a true performance enhancer. And then obviously get rid of CO2 as a performance enhancing tool as well. So like I've dove into that world. I went through like the free diving protocols. I went through Wim Hof. Like I've learned from like Laird and Gabby Hamilton and Brian McKenzie and those guys, and tried to use that as like a tool. So like me and my buddy now, we coach breath work and mental skills, but like it's such a easy tool to use, but people are just still learning to understand it.
Yeah, no, it's something that, I mean, just the like the thousands of years that they like looking at like the research and different people that have done breath work, and then I guess it's this deal where unless it's happened within the last 10 years since the advent of the internet, it's like it's like
it never happened. Yeah.
No, like it's even like T-Nation. I mean, all T-Nation does is they go back 10 years ago and then they just fucking rewrite their articles. And it's a
good move.
And then it's like, we need to start doing that.
I know.
Yeah. But it's because, so years ago, Cali bid on these magazines. They were like from like the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Somebody had this huge like treasure trove of all these old like bodybuilding magazines from like the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. So she like bid on it. It was like $20, and so this like huge box of all this shit shows up. And we start going through it, and it was like how to strengthen your eyes. Like it was all of this obscure stuff of like, they were talking like beta carotene, and then like using your eyes to focus on distance. And I just remember going back and like reading the eye one especially, and then going and finding a bunch of research on how to strengthen your eyes and why people end up needing glasses at a certain age. And then they also figured out that there were certain parts of the country where people's eyes were better, and it was actually things with long horizons. So like you get in a car like here in Texas, and you have to like the road is like flat and long, and they found that places that were really flat, where people were driving, like their eyes had to focus at distance, ended up having less issues in terms of like eye degeneration and glasses than people that didn't have that. So, I mean, just like finding all these research, and then you're like reading this article from 70 years ago where they're talking about eye strengthening, looking to the side, focusing on the distance. It just makes you realize that there's so much information that's being lost. But what's dope is now we have these podcasts.
Right. Well, I was going to comment on the magazines. There's also a whole glute development section, and we recently learned that someone invented all these exercises, and then we flipped through it and found it from the 50s, 60s magazines.
Yeah, that was no, it was when the glute guy, Brett Contrast, who is like, to me at least, he's doing God's work. I mean, he's taking flat ass chicks and basically building these amazing asses. And he gave a dope presentation at Sornex a couple years ago, but he was like, didn't necessarily say it, but came out and said, I invented the glute hip bridge, and like nobody was doing it before me. And we had all these magazines that were showing people doing it. And I actually, when my knee was fucked up after surgery, I was doing them because it was the only way I could train my lower body. Yeah. And then he's like, I invented these. And I'm like, well, I invented the
the question mark.
I invented the ring push-up and the overhead squat. Prove them wrong.
The ring, what?
The ring push-up? That was
the upside down one?
No, that was Andy Stump's joke. When Andy would speak at the CrossFit and do their deal at the seminar level ones, he would make preposterous claims to see if anybody called him on it. And the one he's like, I invented the ring push-up. And he's like, yeah, my claim to fame, obviously being a Navy SEAL. But other than that, I invented the ring push-up. And the hilarious part is not a single fucking person ever was like, whoa. What? Dr. Evil? So, yeah.
It's all made up, but like, again, like you find out like that old problems have old solutions anyways. Like all these problems have been around for the entirety of time.
Well, we have, you can't see it, but over on the wall, there's a John F. Kennedy article in Sports Illustrated from 1959 called The Soft American, where he outlined, I used Kennedy's words in a talk that I gave for NDU, the National Defense University, a couple years ago, that brought me in to speak on the ACFT. And I've started reading, basically, I read a paragraph from it, and I asked him, I'm like, what year do you think this was written? Or, hey, like, I forgot how I kind of played it off, but like, this guy raised, and he was like, I don't know, was that written within like the last few months? Because this is the problem we're facing. And then I read another piece, and like it was Kennedy's piece from the Soft American, and it was also the Surgeon General of the Army from like post-World War II, basically pitching the idea of a PT test because of the problems they had. In World War I, they were able to take these kids off of the farm. They developed grenades that were about the size of baseballs, and they could drop these kids into trenches, and they were pretty fit. World War II, 40% of the people they looked at that were not fit to fight the war. So after that, they were like, holy shit, we need a PT test because something happened in this industrial revolution, getting kids off the farm, moving to cities. And now you think, like, Kennedy writes this in 1959, and that's where like the presidential physical fitness test came from. For those of you guys that are listening that couldn't do the pull-ups, I was a flexed arm hang guy too.
So an interesting thought with this, here's a quote, Brian, I got a test for you. I want you to name the year of this quote. The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority, and they show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties, that probably just gave it away, at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers.
I'm a Socrates 690.
Yeah. If anybody.
Yeah, Socrates. It's, yeah. I mean, so like the problems, like you said, man, like the problems we're seeing, and then this last week I was out at the War College for the Army out in Pennsylvania, and I got invited to a conference on national security and got to discuss, my perception of national security being basically the lack of physical fitness and health and just strength and readiness of potential like the next evolution of kids that are going into the U.S. Army because of lack of physical fitness in middle school and high school, and then also the lack of fitness and health and dependence on pharmacology by the population to fight off, let's say, an invasion. So like, let's say there's less than 1% of this country is in the military, 330 million people, 3 million are roughly in the military, about 1 million plus in the Army. And if something were to happen and they had to call out the militia as, the Second Amendment, the ability to call out the militia shall not be infringed, and all these people love to talk about. But a big part of that was being physically fit enough to fight the threats that are potentially happening, because our founding fathers didn't believe in a standing army. They believed that people should live their lives. We shouldn't have a standing army. If there's a threat, we'll band together and we'll figure it out. And so a big part of this stuff and the physical fitness and the soft American that Kendi was talking about was creating a culture that is strong, healthy, fit enough for service. So the fit to serve mentality. And so my piece that I spoke on, and it was, side note, the other guy who was in my group is a doctor from Brandeis who develops all the healthcare models for the world. So the United States, like all the global health initiatives, he's the guy that like figures out the model for like how to implement logistics, funding, everything. Super interesting guy. And his biggest issue was like all the drugs are not made in the United States. So the majority of drugs are made in China and India. So like if all of a sudden an embargo happens or the ships stop coming and the shipments stop, he's like, dude, the amount of dependence of Americans due to preventative sickness and illness based upon obesity and just being out of shape is like, he's like, it's like 80%. You know, obviously like you have people that are like type 1 diabetics where they need insulin and that's kind of dependent, but most of this stuff are people are doing it to themselves. And like these drugs are coming from India, coming from China. And it was, I was looking at it from like, well, people sit too much, they're not fit enough. And this guy was talking about whole different other problems. So it was really, really impactful, really fun actually in a real nerdy kind of way, but I digress.
No, but it's like a super cool perspective too. Like, so like, I like to dial it back even to like the animal and all of us too. Like technology, like fucked our ability to be like elite operating animals. Like, so like the reason why people are probably a little more comfortable being fat and not having to serve in the army is because now you have guns. Like guns are the reason why like we took over X amount of areas before the United States and all that kind of stuff too. But like now, like the two biggest problems used to be food scarcity and environmental stress. We solved those problems in spades. So now you have DoorDash get sent to you, all these kind of things. And now if you start to dial back to like why we enjoy food and comfort and sitting down and watching TV and all this kind of stuff, it's like entertainment's a whole different thing, but like it's literally in our physiology and in our bodies to enjoy comfort. Like we're supposed to be looking for food and building shelter and all that stuff all day. And then when on the rare occasion that we get food, water, shelter, everything checked, like we're supposed to conserve energy and save up for the next hunt or the next fight or the next shelter to build. But so now like people don't understand, like we're so wired to enjoy like modern life that like we literally have to be like create discomfort in any way, shape or form possible.
Yeah,
so, like,
no,
but like
people do it. I mean, people go out of their ways to create, well, not everybody, but a lot of people do. I mean, but I'll tell you this, and maybe this is just my own, who I am, but like, we go out of our way to stress ourselves. Like Sunday, I was telling these guys, like 8 a.m. till 6. I mean, basically everything we got to do here at the ranch in 100-degree heat. I mean, it was so hot at noon, I went and bought a cowboy hat, which I've never owned a cowboy hat, and I've lived in Texas for almost 5 years. And I've like made fun of people. I'm like, fucking cowboy hat. I like went to the place and I was like, do you have like a sun hat? Because I'm getting fucking cooked out here. And the guy's like,
straw?
Yeah, straw. He's like, what about a cowboy hat? And I'm like, do you have like a big like sombrero looking thing? And he's like, nah, we got a cowboy hat. I'm like, just give it to me. Tractor Supply cowboy hat. I'll wear that shit. But that's like a big part of it where, you almost in today's world, you have to seek discomfort. You have to go out of your way to make shit hard on yourselves. You go, the amount of people on ellipticals when they could just go out and walk outside like blows my mind. Or, it's just it's a really interesting problem. And you make a great point, like about the animal side of it. There's like that great picture of like, you show like the ape and goes up and then you see like the caveman and then you just see this de-evolving into the dude with like, with the soda. And it's really like a de-evolution. There was a really cool book years ago by a professor, and I cannot remember, but he went through all these different examples of like how much more fit we were. And I remember the one was they found footprints in a lake bed in Australia, and based upon the stride length and the way it was going, and they were actually mirroring, these guys were actually running down an animal, and so they were able to like chart the distance between the strides and then the animal strides. And these guys were basically as a group hunting an animal and running basically just slightly slower than Usain Bolt, but they were doing it not over 100 meters. It was like over a quarter of a mile that they had within this lake bed with these footprints, and these guys were barefoot. And like, so they theorized like, here's the fastest dude on the planet, and here's 4 guys in Australia in a lake bed chasing an animal, and all of them are running that fast, and we just have these footprints. And so he went through this whole thing about like this de-evolution of like who we are, that you know, every generation. I mean, I remember Rob Wolf talking about sex binding or sex globulin binding hormone levels, you know, of our grandfathers were in the 10s, and now it's pretty consistent. I look at blood work on people, it's 40 and 50. And for those of you guys who don't know, that gets produced in liver and then binds up free testosterone. So all of a sudden you have a decent testosterone count, like a total, and your free is in the garbage. It's because a lot of times the sex binding or sex binding globulin hormone ends up binding up. So what's interesting is then you start looking at it and saying why. I mean, one of the biggest ones is like leaching plastic and EP, you know, and you know, all these environmental stressors that we encounter basically create stress, which now this stuff goes up. I mean, you know, our grandfathers, great grandfathers were like 9s and 10s, and every generation now they're seeing it peak up, and what they're really worried about is we're going to get to the point where, you know, free testosterone is going to be 0, and then you look at fertility rates falling, which they've seen in Japan and other places.
Yeah. I got a buddy that says the real pandemic is low testosterone.
I wrote an article years ago because I read research that talked about anger issues with guys with low testosterone was like the biggest prevalent. So this guy was real pissed off, and I was like, well, he's just got low T. So when you meet people that are douchebags that have a lot of issues, you know.
What did you look at me?
I wasn't looking at you.
I'm kidding.
But like that's like a deal. Like, and they were actually equating like higher testosterone levels and more like to dudes that are like nicer, more stable, and better shape. I mean, it just basically now I look at somebody and I'm like, God, that guy's kind of a dick.
For our
probably just has
listeners,
low testosterone levels.
For our listeners, the article, and I'll put it in the show notes: low testosterone, cortisol, and CrossFit.
Yeah.
It's a long road.
It is a long road.
Yeah, but all like there's so many variables, like even like the blue light factor of electricity and all that kind of stuff, like limits our ability to get into deep sleep. All these things influence. Like there's not as much of a relationship between sleep and testosterone as I thought there was, but like it's just like I don't know. I say the more we regress to being like those cavemen they're probably running barefoot and nasal breathing through that lake bed too. On top of that, where like the more you regress to like again, circadian rhythm, all that stuff, the more your problems are going to go away. And then even like with the breast stuff, like we have a diabetic hockey player we work with that doesn't have to take his insulin before he trains anymore because he does the super ventilations and the breath work and like spikes his CO2 tolerance so that he doesn't need that anymore. So there's got to be something there to like oxygen, sunlight, nature. Like it's not like everybody knows a fucking apple is healthier than a Snickers bar, but like we make all these very simple choices throughout the day that just compound. And like staring at your phone, like some of that's tied to the eye problems you're talking about. Now kids stare at like the 6 inches away from their face. Like, yeah, they're going to have more eye problems than a kid that's outside. Like, but people don't understand all these compounding effects. And then now like the pharmaceutical whole argument's a whole nother.
So when babies are born, you know, like I'm sure you've seen, like they got really nervous about, it's become almost to the point when you have kids, like the sudden infant death. So what they theorized was that, you know, kids, you know, basically were sleeping on their stomachs. So now you have to swaddle them and keep them on their backs. But for the most part, kids have always slept on their stomachs. And so their eyes, as they develop close. And then as they get over, they pick up their head and then their eyes develop far. So that's like the progression of eye development. So the problem they were running into was that the kids who were starting on their back were like staring up. You know, and so now they were focusing distance, and it wasn't until later when they got their tummy time that they were developing that way. And so there was a whole issue with like, you know, eye development. And I was reading all this research, and it's like, well, what do you want to do? You know, like why does the infant crib syndrome happen, and why does the sudden death, happen? So, you end up keeping your kids on their back and swaddling their little ass. And then, but it's pretty interesting now. Like as soon as you take away the swaddle when they get to a certain age, dude, they sleep on their stomach. Like I watch my son sleep flat on his face with his face like buried in the, and I look and I'm like, how is this kid even breathing? And he just fucking knocked out. And I always think if I could bottle up whatever my kids have with their like sleep thing, where I'm like, it's like a ninja blow dart, and they like, you know, right to sleep, and they sleep so sound. I'm like, God damn it, I'm so jealous of you guys.
Yeah, and it's just like again, you can follow like the intuitive nature of a child, like them asking questions, that kind of thing too. But like now you get like into breathing patterns and they're like the youth diet that we've made. So like the soft food diet we've given infants for decades, probably 100 years at this point now. Then even like if you look back into the breath of like Indians, like the Native Americans used to like put their infant children out in the snow for 5 minutes. Whenever they like would breathe out of their mouth, they'd close their mouth. Like the Native Americans used to look at European settlers and like they used to call them black mouths because like from what their diet and their mouth breathing, they call it like the breath of death. Like it was indicative of poor performance and poor health. So
yeah, well, that's why we call them mouth breathers. Like I used to call Luke the mouth breather, like huffing and puffing. You never noticed that?
Oh, big time. I just think of Eli Manning, the mouth breathing dummy.
But it's funny that it's a stereotype, but it is a legitimate problem. Like literally, like there's 20 benefits to nasal breathing. The only benefit to mouth breathing is you get oxygen and carbon dioxide in and out faster. Like it's a problem.
Well, I mean, isn't there like a let's get into that a little bit. Like, why is it that we've gone in? I mean, is it laziness? Like why are people gotten into this mouth breathing? I mean, is it deviated septum? Is it something happening? I don't know. Is it congestion? Like, why would somebody default to breath out of the mouth opposed from the nose?
It's a lot of reasons. Like, I mean, you can read books like Jaws, Oxygen Advantage, Breath by James Spencer, all those books. Jaws will open your eyes to the, like, again, like cave people and like earlier humans, like they had straight teeth. Like they didn't have these narrow jaws that needed braces and all these things. They say it's from their breath and their diet. And then now you like the nasal cavity is a body part where like you don't use it, you lose it. So like if you default to mouth breath, nasal cavity gets smaller, makes it harder to breathe in through the nose. So now it's like the path less traveled versus the easy road, which humans are fantastic at, Americans in particular. But like a lot of things will force mouth breathing. Like you can eat like crap and like the body uses oxygen as a antibacterial, antiviral, like that's the role of oxygen. It gets shipped to where it needs to be. So like to get oxygen in and out faster, you start mouth breathing, whether it's processed food or if like, again, like if your jaw ends up developing more narrow, which like the book Jaws reinforces, because you had this soft diet, you don't develop the jaw muscles and the mandible and all those things. Eventually it leads to like the easiest path, which is mouth breathing, which again, like the nose cleans and humidifies the air. You actually have the ability to access nitric oxide by stimulating that. And now if you get into like the firing pattern of the body, like the diaphragm and pelvic floor are incredibly important to like align and stabilize the spine. And like, obviously if you take a big breath into your mouth, the chest rises, you take a big breath into your nose, the stomach rises, belly breathing, all the like the yoga stuff you hear, but like in the same process and controlling inhales and controlling exhales, like you develop strength in the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, which is, I think, a good starting point for training, because now, like if you have a good firing pattern, that's your psoas and your glutes firing first and you fire inside out. I think it's all compounding, but like the mouth breathing can be caused by, again, it's a lot of things. It's diet from like infancy on. It's obviously like all the processed foods we eat now, like they cause inflammation, and the body handles inflammation with like oxygen. It's just a cool, simple concept. And then, so now if you're breathing in through your nose, you're getting all the benefits of the nasal breathing, you're developing your core, and now you're at least have the fundamentals of a functional human.
So there was a book I read years ago called Deep Nutrition, and the lady theorized this exact deal, where they took snapshots of children's faces like over the course of history. And what they noticed was that the kids that ate more of an ancestral diet that were breastfed had dramatically wider jaws and wider noses. And it was pretty fascinating when her deal was talking about like breastfeeding, especially because as they're sucking, the child has to breathe through their nose. So now all of a sudden, if like they were bottle fed, it didn't happen in the same way. So I don't understand. I mean, my kids were breastfed exclusively for like the first 6 months. It wasn't, and then we started adding food, and like my daughters never went on. I mean, actually, none of my kids were bottle kids. They kind of make a decision, and my wife was in on it. But that sucking motion from that like creates not only strength in the jaw and widens the nose, and it's pretty interesting to see like the westernized narrowing. It's kind of like the feet, for example. You see people that were raised without feet. I mean, there's toes splay opposed from people that were been forced into shoes, and then you see bunions and toes collapsing and the whole deal. But her deal was looking at like processed foods versus they had some dope pictures that all actually came from the Weston Price Foundation. So I don't know if you guys know, but Weston Price Foundation, Weston Price was a dentist whose son died of a tooth abscess, and he became obsessed with tooth decay. So he traveled the world looking for groups that did not have teeth and mouth and these oral issues. And so he went out and visited a bunch of, basically groups that hadn't been touched by westernized society, and he took pictures of their faces. She had a bunch of, kind of like mouth and this and, the top of the mouth and their jaws and their noses, and tried to figure out like why what these people were doing that allowed them to be healthier. And so if you guys Google the Weston Price Foundation, it's gotten a little kooky. But they have some really good information. But this lady's book went and chronicled, looked at all the pictures. And it was amazing to see like the jaws and the noses and like, the way their faces fit into everything. And then they were showing like westernized, even to the point where they had 2 children that were twins. One was raised I want to say they're like Native American or some form of indigenous tribe. One kid was raised away from westernized society, like in an ancestral way. And the other kid was shipped off to live with a, modern family, let's say. And then they brought the kids back, and like I think even at age like 17 and 18, the difference in, you knew that they were twins, but the difference in face structure with like the width of the nose and then the jaw was like night and day difference. The other kid was taller, he looked more fit, his feet were better. Like it was just like, holy shit, like here's an accurate representation of what we're doing to ourselves. And at that point I was like, man, my kids didn't wear shoes for the first 2 years of their life. Like we had these like little like socky booties they would wear, but like no shoes. We still don't wear shoes in the house. It's a crazy thing when you see that stuff in real time, and you realize that if I want to avoid these problems, I can't make the same mistakes that everybody else is making.
Which is such an intelligent way to like look at parenting and all that kind of stuff too. And like, like most of what you said, like a lot of that's in that Jaws book as well. So that you see, like I think they have the 2 twins in there. Then they have like obviously the progression of the modern jaw or whatever they call it in there. But it makes sense. Like, why would you not? Then like the bare feet, like we've had guys we've trained most of our players and hockey guys and stuff outside barefoot. A lot of those, and then we introduced the breath work. Those guys have all PR'd in their VO2 max. Their verticals have gone up the more they've like strengthened their feet and widened their feet, all those kind of concepts. But it's super intuitive to me. I don't know why people they see that just because like everybody else is doing it. And that's always the easiest.
Because it takes work. And on top of it, it takes admitting there's a problem. So what I've realized is that a lot of people, if they don't admit the problem, then they don't have to make a change because they don't know any better. Yeah. So it's kind of like, well, it's like there was a story, and I'm pulling this from somewhere and I can't remember, but I've used it in talks where these missionaries went and they talked to these, travel the world trying to convert people to Jesus Christ. And this missionary was talking to this village elder, and he was telling them about Jesus Christ and, salvation and going to heaven and the whole thing. And the guy asked him, he's like, so to go to heaven, I need to basically follow your method. And the guy said, yes. He said, well, what if you never came here and I died? Would I still go to heaven? Yeah. He goes, well, if you lived a good life. And he goes, okay, but now that you've told me, he's like, but now you've been aware of it. If you don't convert, you won't go to heaven. And the guy was like, well, let's just pretend we never met. And that's like a kind of an interesting thing where for a lot of people, if, it's pretty interesting to see like the decline in health, and you can track it from like the day that the USDA in the US started making health recommendations on food. You can almost track it 100%. Like at this point, when this happened, all of a sudden now we start seeing these problems. And, a big part of it, and I think it's really easy to go back and say, oh, it's food quality. Oh, it's an issue. A lot of it's just overeating. I really wish there was some like magic equation or, I could say it was this, but just for the most part, it's overconsumption. And it's, lack of just basic movement and exercise and energy expenditure. Like most people are in a calorie surplus, which, you know, at the end of the day is going to result over time in a position that you don't want. And, you know, we've allowed people to kind of get sucked into it. And it's easier to say, well, it's food quality, you know, just don't eat so much. Well, when you have companies spending millions of dollars to make the most hyper palatable food in the world, like is it really their fault? Like, it's the Doritos effect. Doritos spends an obscene amount of money with food scientists to develop like the product that has all the right chemicals, all the right taste to make the most like addictive, dynamic thing, so that when you take one bite of a Dorito, you instantly eat the whole bag. Like, that's their goal. And they've never basically ever come out and said anything different. They're like, no, we put a ton of money in so you don't eat one chip.
Yeah, Brian, that's the book title, Dorito Effect.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, no, it was great. And it's like, well, I mean, why wouldn't you? It's like when you go into a casino, right? Like you walk into Vegas, they've spent a fucking obscene amount of money to design that in such a way that, one, it's turned into a maze. Two, you can't see the outside, so you have no perception of time. It doesn't matter if you walk into a casino at 8 in the morning or at midnight, it looks the same. The lights, the addiction, the way it's all set. I mean, all of this is programmed, so much so that the people that make these hired the Vegas people to figure out how to make these more addictive, you know, and it's not our fault, because there's people that are much smarter that are playing all these games than us. But the issue comes down to, once you're made aware of this, it's kind of like, I always said, like, if I was dating somebody or whatever and they cheated on me, like, don't tell me. Like, I don't want to know, because once you tell me, now I got to make a decision. Like, if everything's great and that happens, just fucking keep it to yourself. But at the end of the day, if you tell me this, now all of a sudden we got to make a decision. And I think for a lot of this stuff, if people don't know and they keep their head buried in the sand and be like, I'm just doing what the government tells me, I'm just doing what everybody else does, then there's plausible denial. But the minute that all of a sudden you make people self-aware of these problems, now all of a sudden they take two. They either take action, like, I don't want to be like this, or then they point to somebody else's, you know, this is their problem. I'm like this because of this, and I can't make a change. And I think there's nothing we can do about that second population, but the population that wants to, you know, be proactive and make a change, which just tends to be the power athlete population, the people that are, you know, willing to put weights in the garage and bang weights and cook steaks and, you know, talk to their kids and, you know, research and find information, like, you know, listen to this podcast and listen to a bunch of dope stuff that you're talking about. But like, those are the people, those are our people, those are your people, those are the people that I want to be in a foxhole with, not just a bunch of people that are like, well, I guess I'll eat the whole bag of Doritos, there's nothing I can do, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. And probably one of the books that like changed my perspective on life anyways was Awareness by Anthony DeMello, where like just having a level of awareness as you like approach your life, what you identify with, like how you approach your desires, like how you approach religion and certainty. And like that just blew my mind on how much I identified as a football player, or like, obviously like in the world we live in, like it's so polarizing. If you identify as Republican or Democrat, all these things are problems. Like the more you hold on to these identities, like the more stress you have. So like life is about obviously having a level of awareness initially about your, like who you are and what you're going to do in life and all that kind of stuff. But then now like you have the awareness of health and fitness. Now you have the awareness of breath, and like breath was a switch for me. Like once I heard people mouth breathing and I trained my breath, like I could hear weakness now. I could hear me beating you because I was in control of my breath. So like, that was an edge. But it's the same thing. Like one of my favorite humans in the world is Naval Ravikant. His little book is phenomenal too. But he's been on Rogan and all those guys too. But like he basically says like the modern war is these exercising reader, mover, meditators versus, again, like the lazy population and the $1 billion business that has algorithms to keep us on our phone, keep us in our chair, all these things. So like that's all, like that's what I hear when you're talking. It's literally just this battle of aware humans versus sheep for the most part.
Well, but that's kind of always been the case. I mean, there's always going to be people that are hyper aware, and then there's always going to be people that are against those people, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of people that just aren't paying attention. I've told this story before on the podcast. We live next door to like 50 horses, and my neighbor has a bunch of goats. And so we're going up to get trash cans in the side by side, and my daughter or I had my two girls in the side by side would go get trash cans, and we stop, and it's pretty interesting because there's probably about 20 goats at the time, and there was one dog, and my daughter makes an interesting observation where she goes, "How does that one dog take care of all those goats?" And I was like, "Well, look at the goats. What are they doing?" And she's like, "They just eat. Their heads are down all the time." I'm like, "Yeah, they don't pay attention. What do? They just bury their heads and they eat all the time. And the dog just sits on the outside and watches them. So then how does the dog protect them? Or more importantly, how does he move them and do, like basically force them to move around?" And then just then, all of a sudden the dog stood up, starts barking, and starts running as fast as he can at the goats. And the goats lift their head and they get nervous, and then they all move. And I was like, do you see the analogy? Like the way that you get goats to move is you bark and he runs as fast as he can at them, creates this stress, and then they figure, they got to move because they're not paying attention. And so like I had this like incredible existential moment where I'm teaching my daughters this analogy about goats and head down, and this is you with the phone in your face, and like, the media is the dog who's barking at us, and this is how they get us to move, is like through these sensational stories and this like, anger and this and the dog barking because fear. And I have this like incredible teaching moment, and we're sitting there watching, and then all of a sudden like the male goat goes over and he like basically puts his nose like right in like the female goat's ass. And I'm like watching this, I'm like, oh God, I know what's going to happen. Then he rears back and pulls out his Twizzler dick and fucking just bangs this and starts banging this goat. And I'm like, and this is how we like, like I'm trying to work out this one, and I'm like, well, this is, and then he ends up blowing it and falling off, and my daughter's like, what's he doing to that little goat? And I'm like, well, that's also America, like it was just this like incredible moment I had that just got interrupted by this goat just banging the other goat, and I'm like, okay, farm life, we'll teach about birds and the bees later, and we went and got the trash cans. I've told you that story.
Ask your mother.
Dude, it's like I've had a couple moments having kids. One of them was my parents in like the late 70s bought a condo in Mammoth. So like 20 weekends a year, we would go skiing, we would go fishing. It was like where we went. We'd drive from LA, roughly 5.5 hours up to Mammoth. So my brothers and I, we fished, we mountain bike, did everything. So I take my kids to Mammoth. And I wake up early, so that day I took their poles down, got them all restrung, all of our bait, tackle, everything, got everything. I'm like, we're going to get up early. We're going to go find our fishing spot. And we're going to go fishing. So I wake them up early, and I got 3 kids, 2 girls and a little boy. I wake them all up, get them in the car, get all the stuff, jump in there, stop, get a coffee, drive up to Lake George. We get out to our spot. My daughters sit down. I cast out, basically dope. It's dark, seeing the sun crest. And I'm like, dude, we're going to be here at first light. You're going to catch dope fish. I sit down with my son, start drinking coffee for 10 minutes. It's perfectly silent. This is the most perfect moment of my life. I snap a picture, text my brother, and I'm like, history repeats. Because that was our deal. We'd get there before first light, have our poles in the water, and we just fucking catch fish. And all of a sudden my daughter stands up, and she's wearing cowboy boots. She slips on a slick rock and goes right in the water. Now, mind you, this is Sierra Nevada, icy water. So she starts crying hysterically. My other daughter gets nervous, and she falls in. And I'm like, okay. And I went reeled their poles in, picked them all up, got them back to the car, got everything, and drove home. And we were home in an hour. And my wife's like, what happened? And I'm like, we had 10 perfect minutes. And so I've realized this, as a father and as a human being, you have to take the snapshot, take the picture, take the mental deal when you see this perfect moment, and whatever happens after that, that's just fucking life. But that's my analogy for pretty much life. You have these great moment, you're like, oh, it couldn't get any better, and then somebody slips in the water, and you're like, okay, time to go home, do something else.
Yeah, I think that I just obviously you're trying to give your kids the best of your perspective, your eyes, your experiences, all those kind of things. I think it's cool how people show that, the fact that you got them out there to the fishing spot at the sunrise, that's now they're going to try and recreate those perfect 10 minutes at some point too.
I hope. The problem is so we're getting back to go. We're planning to go back out there, and I asked the girls, and I was like, "Hey, you guys want to go fishing again?" And they were like, "I don't know. I fell in the water last time." And I'm like, I was like, and they were like, "And we didn't catch anything." I'm like, "Yeah, our poles are in the water 10 minutes." I like fishing. I also like having my pole in the water. So fishing, or I guess you could say fishing and catching, and I love fishing and I like catching. Just being out there, sitting on the lake, like senior pole in the water, like playing that game, like going and talking to the, local dude at like the bait store and being like, what's biting, like how should I do my setup? I mean, this is all the stuff we did as kids, and we were always successful fishing, like finding the right spot, shadows, the whole deal, and then all of a sudden the sun would change and we would move spots. But like, as I was trying to explain it to him, I'm like, dude, this was our life other than skiing. We would go, junior lifeguards in the summer. We'd go to the beach, and then we'd go to Mammoth, and we'd go fishing and hiking and ride bikes. And then in the winter, we'd go skiing. And dude, that was like how we grew up. So I'm trying to impart a little bit of that, but I think we'll see if it's as impactful for them. So you're not married, no kids?
No, not married, no kids.
Perfect. I was single my entire NFL career. And you have to be, because it's selfish. And if you want to play at the highest level, it's really hard. And I never knew how dudes could segment their life and their like wives, and that's why they all get divorced, because their fucking wives hate them at the end of the career. But like, you got kids and you're trying to balance all this stuff, and the focus and just the selfish nature that it takes to be the best and do this game. Like, I just wasn't willing to trade it.
No, I wasn't either. And I like, those 3 years going through the 3 leagues that like I didn't want to be in anyways, kind of deal. Like I put up such like harsh boundaries on like the outside world, dating and that kind of things too, but like protected my sleep, like it was gold, like all those things. And eventually it didn't make for like a very amicable partner. Because because I had my non-negotiables, and like now, like being out of football for a little bit, like that still causes friction, because I'm still like holding on to a routine that owned me. Like I had these routines that like I didn't like allow a lot of life in, because I was like, oh, if I put anything towards plan B, it takes away from plan A, and sure. I put 20 years into getting to plan A, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm happy with how I handled everything and got me to where I wanted to be. So now I insert a little more life into my routines, but at the same time, like I know what's non-negotiable still.
Well, I hope you get to play for as long as you want, man. I tell people all the time that it was by far the coolest job on the planet is to play in the NFL. And people ask me like, oh, do you miss the game? And I'm like, maybe, but just the fact that I got paid a lot of money to train and basically go out on a Sunday and game unis and beat the shit out of the toughest dudes on the planet, like that was exactly what I thrived for. I mean, the ability to know exactly how good or bad I was 70 times on a Sunday in front of millions of people, like, is addictive. And and then spend as much time as you can sharpening that blade to make sure you're the most lethal weapon you can. And like, that's the addictive part of it. And then all of a sudden it ends one day and you're like, now what? Yeah. And so like, man, like I'm so stoked and envious that, dude, you're still on that journey and still hunting it down. And dude, just wish you all the luck, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's interesting to get to like the top of the mountain and then have to start back over. I think that's what cripples a lot of guys initially, until they get curious and start trying stuff.
Well, the other one too is I think a lot of guys don't start, and maybe it's from what you talk about, like, the best plan A is never to have a plan B. So, like, hey, this is all I'm doing. So I think a lot of guys maybe start thinking about it, and who knows, but I think you got to, at some point, you get to the point where like, hey, what does this look like after? Or like you were talking about identity, like, what do I look like without the number on my back? Like, I will always have played in the NFL and like be a football player, and this is part of my identity. But what happens when that identity ends? Or more importantly, I don't. And what's wild too, it's we never got to make that decision. Somebody else made that decision. It's not like my brother, who's been a lawyer. Somebody showed up one day and was like, yeah, fuck you, you don't get to be a lawyer anymore. And I remember having that exact conversation with my brother when I, at the end of my career. He's like, man, this is so crazy. He's like, dude, like, I went to law school, I've been an attorney, like, I make that decision, pass the bar and this, and like, you got clients. Like, what if somebody just knocked on the door one day and was like, oh, you're cut, you don't get to do that job anymore? It's like, I don't know what I would do. And he's like, unfortunately, this is your entire life since you've been 14 years old. Now what do you do? And that was an interesting kind of soul searching moment. And I think everybody has to make that decision for themselves. Whenever I meet people, I'm like, man, do this job as long as you can, because once you don't get to do it anymore, the age old, like you never know when the last time you're going to strap it up. I remember the last time I strapped it up, never thinking, shit, dude, this would be the last moment I played, or like the last time you're going to be on the train or the bus. Because I just figured, fuck, I was going to play for 15 years. I didn't realize it would end at 10.
Yeah, no doubt. And I talk to guys now too, because they'll ask me like what it's like to be out or whatever it is. And I'm just like, would I have been more curious out like while I was still playing? Yeah, maybe that takes a little away from like a little bit of the stress of playing and having to perform and that kind of thing. But then like the more I looked at it and broke it down, like I like as like a high performer or human anyways, like I want to be capable of that like the full spectrum of life inside of itself too. Like I want to be capable of great violence against the best athletes in the world, but then I want to be capable of like this duality, this great peace, and like this like so I don't want football to stress me out like 24/7 and be a slave to the routine either. So like that's where I started this last like year and a half, 2 years. I started stretching my comfort zone with the violent sports and the addiction to the routine and the production and the accomplishment fulfillment that comes with dominating another human being, hopefully the majority of those 70 snaps and those kind of things. So like that's where I found some peace in the transition too. But like you got to feel it. Like nobody's ever going to solve those problems or answer those questions for you. So like everybody's got to face those demons.
Yeah, and it's sad when you see a bunch of dudes at the like what I never wanted was you'll see guys that are like all of a sudden it ends and then they still chase the lifestyle. You know, They're still out there trying to fucking lay it down and, run the streets and do this and here and everything. And I always remember thinking like, hey, when this job's done, that life ends. I mean, you could still go out and have it, but I'm not going to go out and chase chase that bullshit. And, more importantly, I like to think that the mark of a man is how you evolve yourself. I never wanted to be thought of as one-dimensional. I always really loved the whole idea of like the Renaissance man, like, the fighter, the poet, the writer, the artist, the speaker, the politician, the shopkeeper, the merchant. I mean, all of these things that, and that was part of the deal too with like announcing. So I did some announcing, and what kind of struck me wild was that you had dudes that were, and don't mind, like, I'm not saying this at all because those are fucking great jobs if you can get them. But like, you see, Timmy, Tony, Terry, and Tiny, on Sunday, and you got Terry Bradshaw, who people know him as Terry Bradshaw, the Steelers quarterback, from something that he did in his 20s, and he's in his 70s now. So, I mean, he's still reminiscing about, things that he did 50 years ago. And I'm like, how, like, what have you done since then? Like, what's your, and obviously those jobs kick ass because you can make a lot of money and do whatever the fuck you want. But like, what's that identity? Like, what have you grown into? Who have you become? What do people know you as? I mean, I always wanted to be able to do something where be like, oh shit, and like, and that dude played in the NFL, instead of being like the first time they interview you. So I was at the Work College this week, and they introduced me as CEO for Power Athlete, and like went through all this stuff. And the guy was like, and before that, he played in the NFL for 10 years. So yeah. I thought that was a good mark that I've made impact outside of that, where like I never wanted that to be the single greatest contribution that I made, was that I got to, wear white spandex in front of drunk people and entertain them every Sunday while, they got hammered. Yeah.
And like, that's where like the balance, like that makes you more attractive. Like your strength and conditioning, and so that your IQ is off the charts. And then on top of being the football player, like that just makes like you more attractive to like learn from and like try and like imitate and those kind of concepts too. It's kind of like again, my Naval guy, he goes like, people don't go to the circus to see a bear. They don't go to the circus to see a unicycle. They go to see a bear on a unicycle. Like, you want to be capable of all these things, because like that is a whole human. That's an interesting human. Like, that's what, again, drives not only like attention, but also like personal fulfillment and capability. It expands your comfort zone into any environment, because you can, again, you're capable of deep conversations, and then you're capable of, again, being like a great locker room guy, like being violent, and then also like being an incredible teacher and parent and husband, all those kind of things too.
Yeah, being married's interesting. It takes work. Well, I mean, think about that. Like, you actually have this other person that you're like involved in this partnership with raising kids and all this other stuff, and it's like, it's really interesting. Like, being married, like having kids is like, I dig having kids. If I had met my wife 10 years before, we could have had 10 of these things. No, she doesn't agree. But like, being married is interesting, and like, I have an incredible wife. Like, my wife is a rock star, and it's like the easiest person for me to be around. But it's still like, there's negotiation on things. Like, what about this? Like, hey, hey, we should, and it's it's an interesting thing. Whereas before, I never negotiated on anything. I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to fucking do it. Now all of a sudden, you have these other people that like. The thing I liked about being single was nobody ever asked me where I was going or what time I was going to be home.
Yeah,
now it's like, where are you going? What time are you going to be home? I'm like, God damn it. Like, you guys should just let me disappear and smoke bomb, because we used to just disappear for days on end. And, like I would get these frequent saver flight like emails and be like, ooh, I can go to Germany this weekend. I can go here. Like, and I would just fucking go and have adventures.
Yeah.
And, now I laugh about it where I'm like, man, if there was more social media and all that stuff, I could have like taken pictures, but I just went for the adventure and to have a good time, not necessarily doing it for the fucking gram.
Yeah, no doubt.
So what's next, man? You're going to battle it out, hopefully get a chance to get in there, maybe long snap, play a little bit. And, I know training camp starts the third week of July, so we're already kind of in the throes. So you should probably find out here pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, I hope so. The long snap thing is kind of a long shot. I'm in communication with a few special teams coaches that I send updates on my skill to, and then outside of that, I do like the mind strong thing, like the breath performance, like that drives me to keep learning and like chasing edges. I got a little podcast coming out called Chasing Edges as well, where it's just again talking to high performers and see what like competition I think breeds this really cool level of curiosity. Same as it has in you and same it has in like all these great performers. And then I've got like Dr. Serrano and a couple doctors where like the acupuncture guys, like all these things where like guys just don't understand it. And so try and make it palatable to everybody and that kind of thing. But the mind strong stuff has been where a lot of my time's going. It's grown. We got a deal with the San Francisco Giants. We were like the first breast specialist into the MLB. And obviously the Giants are playing lights out in San Fran. So that's where things are going. And as long as I'm healthy and curious and learning, man, I think I'll be just fine.
Awesome. Anything else?
One final question. I'm Houstonian. What's your favorite Mexican restaurant in Houston?
I can't even remember the name of it. Whatever the main one is. Like
Papacitos?
Papacitos?
Yeah, Papacitos.
Papacitos is like the franchise version of Great Mexican down there. Then there's like this one higher end place. I'm blanking on what it was called.
Lupe Tortilla.
Ooh, I do like me some Lupe Tortilla.
No, Lupe is solid though too. No, I want a big Mexican guy. Sorry to
damn.
What's so they got Papacitos, they got is the Mexican spot, and then they got Papados.
For Papados Seafood, Papa's Burgers, Papa's Brothers Barbecue.
And then they also have like a high-end steakhouse.
Papa Brothers Steakhouse. That's right by my dad's house. Yeah.
No, I was thinking where I went there for dinner, and we were in Houston. I cannot remember who I went with, but I was like, because I'd been to like Papacitos and we'd been to all those places, and they're like, oh, we're going to the Papa's Brothers Steakhouse, and I'm like thinking like chain, and we went in, and it was like you said,
that's the only one, yeah.
Yeah, no, unbelievable.
It's phenomenal. They got the piano up front with the guy singing in the bar, and then you got phenomenal steaks. Like that was one of our go-to spots, and like the steak 48s and Del Frisco's, all that thing.
Yeah, Del Frisco's they have here. My other favorite part about Houston is the History Museum. So the Museum of Natural History, where it's HMS. So I take the kids at least once, if not twice a year, down there. I don't know if you ever got a chance, but dude, they have like this dinosaur exhibit where, I mean, it's incredible. Like they have the short-faced bear, they got this. I mean, so we went in there, and then shocker, my daughters like gems. They think they really dig like, I don't know, rocks and gems. So they have like a whole collection of like diamonds and like all these rare gems and all this like crazy stuff. So we go look at dinosaur bones, and then they get to go look at these crazy diamonds.
Have you done NASA? Or space?
So like that, I was gonna say, so I've been to the museum once, but then I've been to NASA a couple times, and just blows your mind. And then so I brought some buddies down from back home, and we all went, like, honestly, like I gave them like a list of like 10 things to do. And I was like, guys, pick your best 3. I was like, we can helicopter hog hunt. We can we can go out to the clubs. We can do whatever you want. And then, or we can go see NASA, museums, like all that stuff. And they chose NASA was like their number 1 on their list. So we went down there, and we had like the behind the scenes deal. And dude, we ended up getting to shoot the shit with 4 astronauts for like 45 minutes. So damn cool. And then like when they start breaking down like that, like the Space Center was never assembled down here, and like they've only had 3 errors in assembly, and it's 100 yards long, and it blows your mind. Then you're sitting in all the aircrafts that actually like went into space. it's so crazy, and like it kind of just makes it a little more tangible than like seeing the rocket go off and like watching Apollo 13 or whatever,
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah. Dude, I fucking love Houston. People shit on it all the time.
I think it's because it's such like a swampy, ugly place.
Yeah.
Every time I go out there, I'm like, this place is ugly. It's not like hill country. It's just swamp.
Yeah, there's not like a lot of nature to go touch out there either. Like,
it's like Columbus, Ohio. I mean, like believe me, nobody's like, oh, the Paris of the Midwest. We're not going to Columbus, Ohio, because it's this fucking beautiful place, and like you get back to nature. You go to Columbus because of West Side Barbell or Rogue or Lead
OSU.
FTS
or the Arnold Classic or something.
Yeah, the Arnold Classic. That's the only reason you go to Columbus. Every time I've been to Columbus, it's for something. It's like, it'd be a great place to go this summer? Columbus, Ohio. Why? I don't know. Nature's there's no way. It's not like nobody's going to Houston.
No, Houston's like they call it the armpit of Texas. It's just so hot.
Who the fuck calls it that? The fucking Dallas folks?
I have driven all over Texas, and the area we live in here in Austin, this hill country. I think it's because it reminds me of California, like the hills and the mountain, and like this. That's why people from California come here, and they're like, I could live in this hill country. I've driven all over Texas and been like, there's no fucking way I could live in North Texas or
North Texas,
or
no.
Panhandle stuff, or Amarillo or all that area. No way. This area, but even Houston. Every time I go there, I'm like, ooh, Houston. It's like the Inland Empire of Texas.
Oh, it's massive, but you just avoid I-10 at certain times of day, and you don't have to worry about traffic. You're fine.
Do you know where I do want to go? I want to go to Shiner, and I want to go to LaGrange. Every time I've driven through there, I never get to stop. I want to stop at Shiner, so we should go there.
Between Houston and San Antonio.
And
Let's do it.
And LaGrange. We should do that. That'd be a good adventure.
Brian, you were saying a compliment about Houston. We interrupted.
He called it the armpit of Texas.
Yeah. Not the greatest example of my time there, but no.
You've obviously never been to El Paso.
No, I have not.
Yeah, El Paso is. Every time I drive through there, I'm like, oh man, this.
You seen Mad Max?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
that's El Paso.
But it's just like training camp in Houston was like 100 degrees plus humidity. Like we're on the field for an hour and a half, like before guys started cramping up. So it was a tough place to be for training camp and that kind of thing. But like if you know how to navigate Houston, it's super easy to get around.
Yeah. It's just Well, I mean, it's easy to get around in an armpit.
Shit, damn it. All right.
Awesome.
That's all I got.
Well, dude, thanks for tuning into another episode of Power Athlete Radio. Dude, it was great to connect, and dude, we'll be watching you. So for people that might not know how to get a hold of you, social media, like what's the best way?
Yeah, Brian_Peters10 is all my social stuff, and then the Mindstrong Project, the breast stuff is Mindstrong Project, either .com or you can follow us on Instagram, that kind of thing. But like that's where most of our information's at and where you can reach the boys.
Cool. Well, we'll put that in the show notes, and we'll definitely direct people there. And dude, thanks for taking 2 hours out of your day to come rap with us and be a guest on Power Athlete Radio.
Hell yeah, enjoyed it. Appreciate you having me on.
Awesome.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in.
Take it easy.
Bye.